What is going on, everybody? This is Audible Sports Kids. How's it going, everyone? Brett and Jeff here. How's it going, Brett?
Good.
Finally have it. Final two teams, the teams everybody expected. Bengals, Rams. Congrats to both of these teams for making it to the Super Bowl. We'll talk a little bit more about them next week, but we're going to do something different this week. So, with the way the Super Bowl is nowadays, there's a 2 week kind of waiting period per se and the Pro Bowl is in between the championship round and Super Bowl, unlike how it used to be back in the day where it was after the Super Bowl. So this week, what I figured we'd do is let's talk about the Pro Bowl. There's lots of things kind of over the years that have changed with the Pro Bowl, and figure we just talk about it. So first thing, I think would be a good thing to kind of talk about is fan voting. Brett, what's your kind of feelings on fan
I
voting
don't
with the
really
Pro
like
Bowl?
I don't really like fan voting, but it is what it is. In all the sports, it's just things get skewed because of big names.
Yeah, that
Sometimes it's not
yeah,
always wrong, but it seems like it. Lately, there's been some players that I don't think are deserving of it, as some of these younger guys are showing them up.
yeah, that's definitely true, and it's hard for certain positions like offensive linemen where, you know, it's going to be more the name that gets it. While yes, like you said, most of the time, I would say maybe 95% of the time, the people are deserving of it. Where
But you get to that point where,
it,
like, some guys are just already like. I think Josh Allen's been to a few now, right?
he for sure went last year, and once again
Yeah, but
this
I
year.
don't know if he played in it, or whatever. But yeah,
Oh, actually,
he
no,
played it.
he's not. That's
No,
on
he's
me.
not playing it this year. But what I mean is, like, okay, is it one of those things now where it's so boring, one and done? Okay, I've already done it. I'm good.
That is true, and it's kind of hard too when you think, okay, when it comes to when you consider that fan voting is 1/3 of the votes. Some people might say, oh, Lamar Jackson. I really like Lamar Jackson over a Josh Allen, especially when you think the most of this voting kind of comes down before the season's over. So if someone has a good middle of the season versus like a Josh Allen who did
Like,
not struggle
here,
but
they
has
could vote Christian McCaffrey, and he barely played this year.
they
Something
could.
like
I
that.
mean, there was
And it's not that he's not deserving; it's just not this year.
and this is kind of to kind of show this where last year for the NBA fan voting, Derrick Rose was a all-star starter. So it just kind of obviously we haven't really seen this in the NFL, but and a lot of the time it is proper. There's just always kind of like who's more popular versus someone who could be right under them or kind of tied with somebody where you might think, oh, they maybe should have been in over him. Like take for example, Trayvon Diggs, who led the league in interceptions, but when you look at a lot of his other stats, he gave
It
up
was
like the
bad.
most yards, penalties, all this stuff. And then you look at a guy like AJ Terrell, who isn't making it, where he literally was an island out there and like had an amazing season, and he's not going. So there's definitely stuff like that where Trayvon Diggs, being on the Cowboys, having those primetime games where he makes those primetime plays, definitely helps when it comes to the fan voting. And also, you have a dude on the Falcons and AJ Terrell where it's the Falcons. So it's definitely, you know, challenging to kind of counterbalance that. Obviously, fan engagement is very good to have. It's just, it's a question of how much you
Yeah,
want to
and
give
there's
them.
just no way. I was thinking about they could just let them know before the season. But how do you know if you're gonna feel like playing in the Pro Bowl like that?
Yeah, that's another thing too. Because of when the voting is, it's like, there's still season left to be had. You can have, you know, above average playing, but then once the voting's done, say you go off and have like record-setting numbers, and that changes things. I don't know. Voting is challenging in general, with it, no matter what the sport is or even what it is voting. I know something maybe they've done a little bit in the past, but I never noticed was they're even doing fan voting for the Walter Payton Man of the Year, which I think is a little much when thinking about this fan voting situation because a lot of the times that of anything is kind of popular fan voting because who's kind of doing the research to see what their favorite players doing in the community. Obviously, no matter what, it's good stuff, but maybe some of these lesser known players who do amazing things and have all these charitable things aren't doing or aren't as big as names. So it's definitely challenging.
Yeah, it's just you could debate about it for we could go back and forth for a long time.
No,
I mean, I
definitely.
think it really messes up in the NBA and NFL, but and I'm not gonna like use the Trey Young and Zach Levine because Levine missed some games, so it is what it is. I mean, at least DeRozan made it, but just using that Bulls team as an example,
I mean, but the
you
thing
can
is, at
upset.
least Levine made it though. It's not like he wasn't like
Yeah,
snubbed
I
from
know,
it.
but they were wanting him as a starter.
Yeah. I mean, at least he still made it though. I mean, I would love for him to also do the slam dunk and 3 point and just you know do everything, but that's beside the point. Maybe we'll talk about a little bit about the All Star Weekend when the NBA gets to it, which is coming up. It is very soon now that the All Star voting is all done. So it'll be fun to see who does that. I mean, I know so far there's been one player to be announced for the slam dunk, Cole Anthony out of Orlando. So it'll be fun. All Star Weekend is always fun, and this year it's in Cleveland, so
I got a question for you.
bring
Going
it.
back to the NFL now. Cooper Cup, the last two seasons versus any years of Megatron. Who's better?
I mean, statistical wise, I mean Cooper Cup more than likely, just because of the season he's having this year.
He was pretty dominant last year too, but more under this year, yes. But
I think there's some injury issues too that
I'm
kind
leaning
of.
towards Cup too. He just, I think he's more based around like technique and stuff than just skill. Like where Megatron is just talent.
I mean, he was a pretty hard worker too, but I mean, it's interesting though when thinking of Cooper Cup because all of these years he's been in the league, he's had really good years or really good stats. There might be an injury or something that plagues him, but he's also was part of systems where it wasn't always about him. And now he's in that system where he's the number one guy, and he is showing what he's capable of, and it's amazing. I mean, you can kind of say without any of those players, they wouldn't be where they're at. But without Cooper Cup, they definitely wouldn't be where they're at, without a doubt. But I don't know. It's amazing to see kind of him getting the recognition I thought he deserved years ago. But hey,
He
he.
started out late in life, kind of too, with how he got in the NFL. So
Oh yeah, it's an amazing story. Like that's one I think everyone needs to check out. It's kind of like Adam Thielen's a little bit. I mean, maybe not as hard. I don't want to like compare kind of stories here, but
it's a similar circumstances. Yes.
yes, I both great stories. Look them up if you don't know them. But let's get back to the Pro Bowl here for a second, and not just talk about the fan voting or the voting in general, which the voting does kind of I guess tie into this. But do you think there needs to be something done with the way positions are voted in?
I mean, yeah, really, here's the thing that makes that tough. There's only two positions that it messes up. It's really defensive end and outside linebacker for
Yes.
passing.
Yes.
Otherwise, that's why they haven't changed it. If it affected more, they probably would. But because it isn't an actual game, you know what I mean? Like, you guys screw around pretty much. I think that's why it just doesn't, no one does anything about it.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. And I think as we're seeing a lot more of these teams go to also to a base 3-4, which I think maybe the more and more it happens and we see um okay, so a little bit of backstory just for those who maybe don't know. So for many of these defenses, they run either what they call a base 4-3 or a base 3-4, which depends which makes these defensive alignments a little bit different for the sense of what they call their edge pass rushers. They're either linemen or defensive linemen, and so with the Pro Bowl they count outside linebackers as any of these guys who are considered in a 3-4 outside linebacker, depending on what their position is called on like maybe the team website. And so when we're looking at say the Pro Bowl roster this year, when we look at the NFC, the outside linebackers are Chandler Jones, Robert Quinn, and Shaquille Barrett. All of those guys, pass rushers. So does that kind of get in the way for some of these guys, that are these what they call stand-up linebackers in getting to the Pro Bowl? So like, and when you look at the NFC, there's technically only two stand-up linebackers in Micah Parsons and Bobby Wagner, when guys like Fred Warner or Roquan Smith deserve a spot. So it's very challenging, and I think there kind of just needs to be a revamp of maybe not calling them positions, but what they maybe are doing. So instead of calling them defensive ends or outside linebackers, let's call them edge rushers. Just so that way there's not positional stuff, and then just call kind of the inside or stand-up outside linebackers as just linebackers. I think that there just needs to be, I don't know, fairness, but there's just it always kind of upsets me seeing kind of guys who deserve to be in the Pro Bowl not because of position technicalities.
Yeah.
And we're seeing it so much more as some of these teams kind of transition to what they call a base 3-4. So, someone like Joey Bosa from the AFC has always been considered defensive end, but they switched things up and are in a more 3-4 type system where now he's an outside linebacker.
Where it varies, and it's just. I mean, I get it. It makes sense to change it, but we're looking from the outside in. I think they're looking from it's not broken, and nobody really wants to plan it, so we're not fixing it.
Yeah, I mean it's not that big of an issue, I would say, but it's one where there's definitely some
I
discrepancies.
mean, I wish some of these guys would stand up and say something, but if fans aren't going to change it, it would have to be the players.
Yes, and here's another thing that's kind of the issue with maybe changing it. The Pro Bowl isn't really that big of a thing. Yes, it's fun. Yeah, players get their bonuses for winning, and they get to spend a week with a bunch of guys and maybe collude and go to a team together. But
that bonus is nothing compared to most of their salaries. So
yeah, and for the fact it's not, it's a fun time, but there's nothing really super engaging about things. I know we talked about a little bit about kind of like these skill showdowns they used to do and how they've tried bringing them back, but they're still not as maybe cool as, it's definitely the Pro Bowl is definitely one of those things for young players. You're not seeing, Tom Brady go to the Pro Bowl. I can't even tell you the last time he's even been to the Pro Bowl.
me neither. Probably one of the last few, like really old QB challenges that's out.
Maybe, but he's probably playing the Super Bowl those years. That's another thing too, because of them moving it to the in between the Pro Bowl or the Super Bowl and the championship week. The people who go to the Super Bowl don't play in it, so it's not like the old days where Walter Payton went to the Pro Bowl in '85, and now that entire '85 team is going to the Pro Bowl after the Super Bowl, and
Yeah.
so that's just one example. I know there's millions of others. But it just, I don't know. While I don't think there's major things that need to be changed with the Pro Bowl, I still think it's a fun time, especially when they kind of had the skill stuff, and obviously last year with COVID they didn't even have one or anything, but it is still a recognition from a mixture of fans, coaches, and fellow players of like, hey, you're one of the better players. It's not like all pros where it's only voted by the press. This is kind of like your peers, the people you're playing kind of for. So it is kind of cool to see the Pro Bowl. I mean, no matter what kind of sport it is, to have these kind of all-star type showings. But I mean, when comparing them all, the NFL's is definitely on the lower spectrum of kind of these all-star weekend type things, because obviously the NBA with their slam dunk contest, the 3-point shootout, skill showdown, all these things is a lot better. And even when you think of, the MLB with this, a lot the home run derby, that's the only reason there's kind of an all-star kind of thing for them. It's all about the home
Yeah,
run
I know.
derby. Not many people I think watch kind of their game. It's all about the home run derby, and it makes sense though,
It's kind of
because
how the NBA is though too.
yeah,
I'm
definitely.
more I'm more apt to tune in for the dunk, the 3 point, or skills challenge than I am the actual game.
Yeah, and it's sad that there's no, you can say that there's no equivalent to the NFL. At least there hasn't been for a while. I think if they bring in like a throwing competition, get Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen out there, and just or like races, have Tyreek Hill race everybody. So there's definitely things they can be doing, but for some what reason, whether it's legal or whatever, they're not doing it. They're making it
Yeah,
like
I
more.
think they're afraid to get hurt even more now
That's
than they
another
were
thing too.
before.
It's all about your money. So that's another reason there's not much competition when it comes to some of these games. They're gonna not be going all out in the Pro Bowl, and they haven't for a while because of injuries. Especially when you see what maybe Sean
Well, like
Taylor
here,
did
I'll
to a
use an
punter
example.
several
Like Joe Burrow
year.
might never choose to play in it ever because he has had a knee injury before. So why would he want to risk more? I'm just saying
Exactly.
as an example.
And if you want to compare it, you can kind of compare that to a lot of projected high level high round players not playing in their college bowl games because they it's a risk. It's like why you can save yourself to get more. It's all about making more money. It's about continuing success. So why risk it doing something that doesn't I don't want to say matters, but it doesn't matter as much maybe.
It's tough. We don't know all the reasons why, but it's just not what it used to be.
And how much of that maybe is on players? How much is that on fans? It's definitely a mix. So I don't know. It's just it's one of those things. It's like you could do these little things to make it better, but almost why bother?
Yeah,
And it's kind of sad.
that's why I think they haven't changed
Exactly. Maybe we'll see here in a couple years if something changes. But just want to talk a little bit about the Pro Bowl today. But let's talk about something that maybe we don't know anything about quite yet because it's not for another week. And I thought it would potentially be fun to give everyone our kind of NFL honors award winner projections. So every year NFL has an award show, give out their kind of awards for some of the big awards, MVP and all the others, and a couple smaller ones. I mean, I know we talked about the Walter Payton Man of the Year earlier, and that the voting with that, but that's one that it's you win there, and they have some fun ones, and they always get some comedian or something to host it to make it all funny and make it kind of like the Emmys.
Well, because they're going to, good causes. It's all donation stuff. So
Oh yeah. So let's give our projections for some of these awards. So first up, let's start out with the big one, the most valuable player, which in some terms nowadays is just the best QB award.
it pretty much is the best QB award. And Rogers is going to win it. So, well, my guess is, just based statistically, it's not about winning; it's stats. So
Yeah, I mean it's pretty much. I you can make the argument it's a three-man race between Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Matt Stafford, but I mean when you look at kind of the numbers, it's hard. I mean it seems like and you also got to think who is kind of voting for this, and they've already announced the All-Pro team, and normally that's a good kind of designation on who's going to win MVP between these guys. That now that Aaron Rodgers was first team All Pro, it's hard not to say Aaron Rodgers, even though I think maybe Brady had the better year per se.
but it's all about stats. It's not about the ability. It's statistically like quarterback, QBR, blah blah blah.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. Even though Brady did have more passing yards and touchdowns, but
but Rodgers has for his whole career has been always high on the QBR.
No, it's not about career here. You're kind of talking like you're talking about how people look at the view of the Pro Bowl. It's not about all year. It's about this year.
No, I'm just saying that's what they've been. That's the reason he has a few MVPs already.
That's true. And then he's looks like he's going to be back to back. Can't tell you the last time that's
I'll
happened.
be honest with you. I mean, I think part of being an MVP is a team that's still in the going to the Super Bowl. I'm not gonna lie. I've always
Well,
felt that.
normally that's how it is, but at the same time, they're not. This is voted before the playoffs even start.
I know. I
So
don't think it should be voted on until after football's done.
but you also have to think. A lot of time the most valuable player is on the best team because they feel that the quarterback with the best numbers and all that are you know the man that should be
Because one could
leading his
say
team to the
Matt
Super Bowl.
Stafford should get it because that was the piece the Rams needed. I guess.
You can also say what would the Packers or the Bucks be like without him, without their quarterbacks, and they definitely would be maybe in a worse position. But it's hard to compare. So
Yeah, it is difficult. Yep.
so next up, let's look at the Coach of the Year, and this one I think is a lot more challenging because a lot of times there is a team that just comes from nowhere and people think this coach really helped set it up good, or there's just a team that maybe is missing a couple players and they think he just coached his way to this amazing season. But there's a lot of different ways you can see as someone being like the best coach of that year, and obviously there's this is more of a publicity type award. I would say there's so many good coaches out there
Yeah,
that
but
get no recognition.
I think this is a pretty easy one. I know it wasn't voted on until it was voted on earlier, at the end of the season, but not right now. But it should be the Bengals coach.
It is, that's who you think will win it, or who you think should
No,
win it.
that's who it should be. I don't think he's going to get the recognition he should have, coaching wise, because we didn't know this was all going to fold out the way it did. Obviously, no one did. Well, few people in Vegas, but that's about it.
I mean, you can. I mean, with those kind of terms, you can also think Rich Bisaccia. God, I can't. I'm apologizing for mispronouncing his name, but the Raiders head coach or interim head coach for kind of leading that team through all the
Has an interim
struggles.
coach ever won it?
Uh,
I don't know
Bruce
that.
Arians. I think that year Indy, he won it. No,
For
he
coaching.
won. He won Coach of the
Yeah.
Year.
Yep.
All right, so there you go. Yes, an interim head coach has won it, so it's not impossible. But I think Mike Vrabel's gonna win it when you look at kind of what he did, making that team the first
Yeah.
seed with kind of what they had. I think of
He's
the
definitely a player's coach.
oh
So,
definitely. I mean, what other head coach said they'll cut off their junk to win a Super Bowl?
probably a lot more
Probably, but openly said it to the media. Not many. And he's just a from everything I've heard, he's a good guy to be around. But let's look at a couple more of these. A lot of these are probably obvious on who should win it. But offensive player of the year, Cooper Cup. I mean, with the season he had, it
I
should
mean,
be.
he he's been having he's had a great year. He's very consistent. At least this year he was.
I agree. I
But
mean, do you think anyone else should win it?
no, because the rookies have their own awards. So
That's true, and y'all. I mean, I don't think
I mean, I know
Jamar
it shouldn't matter,
Chase.
but I kind of take it. Well, I always forget about Mac Jones too.
Yeah, well, there's a reason you forget about him.
He's a quarterback, so he might win it.
Yeah, maybe, but we'll see here soon. What about defensive player of the year? This one's a little more harder because it doesn't. There's not like a mainstay like a guy should win it. But I think T.J. Watt. I mean, he tied the sack record. He should have gotten it, but the refs were kind of, or
I
not the
agree with
refs,
that one.
but he should have the sack record, even
The
if
NFL rigged it.
yep they counted it as a forced fumble but not a sack, even though it literally it's whatever. But Yeah, I mean, whenever you put up those kind of numbers, I feel like you should definitely be in the running. It's norm. I mean, it's kind of like MVP that it's a quarterback one. It's kind of
You
turned
know who
into
should have
for
been up there for us?
Robert Quinn.
No, not for. I meant just in general, like for our list.
Who's that?
Jonathan Taylor for offensive player of the year too.
Yeah, I would say so, but when you kind of look at the last couple games and I think he kind of lost it there, and I think it's more memorable what Cooper Kupp did over Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor's year was amazing, but Cooper Kupp's was historical.
Yeah,
So,
he was.
and this isn't even including the playoffs. Obviously, if they were to be voted into the playoffs, Cooper Kupp might win MVP. So,
Yeah, maybe.
but
We'll
it's
see.
not. So yeah, and then yeah, we both kind of agree on T.J. Watt should win Defensive Player of the Year. A couple other guys, a lot of people, someone who we'll talk about with Defensive Rookie of the
But I
Year
don't think
and
Aaron Donald had that great of a year.
no, but at the same time, it's Aaron Donald, and it's kind of
I know
like
it's one of those names where there's going to be years I think later in his career that he probably isn't deserving of making it, but he'll get voted in and not go.
it's kind of like how LeBron should win the MVP in the NBA a lot more than he does. It's kind of like there's almost that expectation. I
Yeah,
think that's as close of a comparison as I can make with that. But
yeah.
here's a
That's
challenging
fair.
one though. Who do you think should win Comeback Player of the Year? There's a handful of players. I'd say there's maybe three or four that come to the mind right away. But who do you think?
Nick Bosa, and Joe Burrow probably in my top two.
You gotta add, Dak Prescott into that when you compare.
Yeah, I forget about him sometimes too. You know what I mean? I guess I was thinking of people who I knew. I don't know who else. Joe Burrow and Bosa are ones I could think of off the top of my head.
I mean, for a while people thought Dak was gonna win it, but then Burrow started putting up these numbers kind of late, and I think it should be Burrow. I mean, comeback is kind of like the MVP when there's a meaningful quarterback you're gonna put. It's kind of more of a quarterback award because of it is kind of amazing what Joe Burrow did because of the injury he had. He came back. No matter any time someone comes back from an injury, but it's also more amazing when you think of what he accomplished behind that offensive line. When comparing Dak and Joe Burrow's stats, a lot of them are very similar, except how many times they were sacked. Burrow was
Joe
sacked
Burrow was sacked a lot.
nearly double as much as
Well, you know
Dak
he just
was.
got taught how to slide this year, right?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he. If you notice his slides, if you have to watch in the Super Bowl, but if you can remember the last couple games, his slides look very weird
I did notice the slides did seem peculiar in
because
some
he didn't
ways.
know how to until like this year.
That's interesting.
Because I think part of it is in college, quarterbacks are just as big as a lot of these other guys. The NFL is when you get to that next stage where they're bigger.
Yeah, that is
Uh,
true. You look at some of
and
those highlights of Burrow, and he's kind of juking around guys. And,
quarterbacks like to juke around and take the hits more. When once you get to the NFL, they don't want you.
I mean,
Nowadays, they
that's
don't
what
want
you
you doing
see
that at
a
all.
lot. A lot of times you'll see kind of maybe quarterbacks playing. They'll have their coaches will have them play even baseball a little bit to try to learn how to slide better, or get someone who played baseball to come in and teach them how to slide. Your quarterback gets hit running in the open field, gets hurt serious, and then there goes everything in many situations. Unless you have Nick Foles as your backup quarterback, then you're fine. I mean, yeah, I think Burrow, when you look at kind of what he's accomplished, and not even including here in the playoffs, when you just look at kind of the stats he had before. I mean, yeah, Dak did pretty good too, but I think his were just it was too inconsistent with what was expected, kind of by the point some of the points in the season. So I don't know. This is a hard, kind of tight, game or award to think because how much of it is the fact they're coming back from what they're coming. Like last year, everyone thought Alex Smith should have won it, but at the same time, were his numbers comparable to someone like Big Ben's? So it's interesting.
Yeah,
It is very
it's tough.
interesting. But let's close it out with some rookie ones. We have offensive rookie of the year. We've already mentioned, and it should definitely be Jamar Chase. Just looking at the numbers he put up, he was an All-Pro his rookie year. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. He's kind of already showing he's the number one wide receiver in the NFL. Hopefully it stays. Hopefully he doesn't forget again how to catch. I don't think he will. But that's that. And then looking at Defensive Rookie of the Year, I think this is another kind of easy one. I mean, a lot of people thought for a while Micah Parsons should win Defensive Player of the Year. So for him to win Defensive Rookie of the Year is very obvious.
Yeah, I think he's the obvious one. I could be here. I'm just saying It's going to be Mac Jones or Chase. I think for defense, it's not as comparable.
I I agree. If Jamar doesn't, somehow win it, it should be Mac Jones. But I don't. I think at this point, there's not any kind of ifs, ands, or buts to it per se. So I don't know. It's challenging.
Saying,
it's
just because he's a quarterback, you got to keep that in the air. I think.
I mean, most seasons, a lot of the time by this point, a lot of these are kind of already dictated and majority kind of know. I mean, at this point, you can't even bet on who's going to win it, and there's a reason for that. So, and this isn't for another week on who's the rewards. So, it's just interesting, and it's just something that I thought we should talk about a little bit, because we talked a little bit about it before the season, but it kind of gives a little synopsis on how we thought the season went. And with there no being, and like meaningful football games, we thought it would be cool to kind of talk about something different. Before we wrap things up, let's do something we always do, our Add a Legend, fun little thing that we do to kind of say, hey, not necessarily what this team does, but let's look at, always at a, blast from the past, a player that we always think a certain team could add from their past to make this team, better, a Super Bowl contender and whatnot. So this time around, we have the Miami Dolphins. And, they have a very, I say this a lot, but they're definitely one of those teams that have a storied past. They're the only undefeated team in NFL history. They're, have, a handful of players that people call some of the best, whether they were able to win a Super Bowl or not, as one of these guys
I think you're just
shall be mentioned.
One.
I'm hinting at one that definitely will be mine. But Brett,
I'm probably picking the same one as you.
Are we both going Dan Marino here?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
The obvious choice here.
I think it is. I mean,
I can't imagine a Dolphins fan that wouldn't pick him right now.
Yeah, I mean, especially kind of with how the fan base is, and I guess when you consider Brian Flores was trying to trade for a quarterback, and how kind of they're not precisely on with Tua in Miami, so adding literally a quarterback people call one of the best that just wasn't able to get over the hunch to this team, a team that has lots of talent too, keep in mind. So adding Dan Marino himself would be very amazing.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I mean,
it could be.
I think there's no other obvious one on that.
Now, there's a handful of players I think that would be interesting. I mean, but when you look at someone like Jason Taylor, I mean, he was a much more recent player that had a lot of success and would make that defense even better. So there's definitely a couple handful of guys. I mean, whenever you have the teams they had and the Super Bowls they had, there's definitely a handful of guys out there. But that's all we got for you today. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and or I guess kind of announcement here. This Thursday at Time TVD, we will be having a little Madden hangout playthrough of the Super Bowl. And we'll be streaming that live on Twitch, and will be posted later on YouTube. And, we'll just have a good time. Have some trivia, have some, hopefully get some people out there to give some comments, some questions, or everything. Just come have a good time. Well, it'll be interesting. Just something new out there we want to give to you. Maybe we'll continue that with the NBA. Maybe we'll have to get a hockey game or get, the show eventually come October. So, hey, we'll see. But have a good one, everyone.